everyone. This is Adlane Fellah, Chief Analyst at Maravedis Research. Today I have the pleasure to welcome Scott Taylor, Vice President of Sales and General Manager at Single Digits. Hello, Scott. How are you today?
Adlane, thank you very much for having me today.
It's great to have you. And I've been chasing you for a while. So
yes,
very happy to have you. Again, a reminder for our folks, please subscribe, like this video. It encourages us to continue. This is part of the MSP interviews. We also have industry shakers interviews. And basically what we do is discuss trends in managed connectivity for hospitality, multifamily, and other emerging verticals. So let's start off by you reminding us, or for those who don't know Single Digits, tell us about your company and services.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. So Single Digits, we provide managed connectivity, entertainment, and IT solutions, not only for the MDU industry, but also in hospitality. We have over 3,000 properties in the US and Canada. And then we also have a large presence in the Caribbean region as well. Our expertise goes back 20 years. I think we're about in 2026, we'll have our 22nd anniversary. So very proud of that long-standing history serving all these different communities.
Congratulations. Tell us what's unique about your company, because there are many MSPs out there. What's unique?
Yeah, it's definitely the diversity between the MDU and hospitality side of things. And, it's not just about the customer base diversity. It's about what we learn. Us being able to take a look at all these different types of scenarios that we run into and get a true understanding of RF behavior. That's really the proof in the pudding in terms of what type of vendor are you and what type of partner are you. Really goes back to being able to understand the RF. Anybody can rack and stack a switch. Anybody can pick up the phone and answer questions, but making sure that it's done right the first time so that it is set up perfectly for residents to be able to have an excellent experience, that goes a long way. Obviously, when you take a look at security threats with that extensive infrastructure that we have out there and all sorts of different transactions that we're seeing, it allows our NOC to be able to understand security threats and be able to understand how to mitigate those and pass that on to our managed IT team as well. And then obviously we're getting thrown a bunch of new technologies on a constant basis from all the different industries. For example, in our Caribbean region, we started a few years ago working with different all-inclusive hotels around wristbands for children so that way parents can keep track of where they are. And I could certainly see that being able to get translated into senior living for residents as well.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to our video interviews and content with industry shakers. I just want to share quickly, because we get a lot of people asking, how can we work with Maravedis and what do you guys do? So besides the actual research reports, we have 3 ways you can work with us, from marketing essentials to marketing pro and custom projects. So marketing essential is basically a marketing program for startups, for small companies with limited budgets and limited experience and resources, where we can help them maintain a constant flow of content through our content engine. We hear very often, I want to do this blog, but I forgot about it. I don't have time. I don't have any ideas what to write about. I don't know what to tell, how to say it. I'm just too busy, etc. So, the program starts at $5,000 and provides you with a number of deliverables and outputs that we can agree on together. Those are 6 to 12 months agreements. For more sophisticated, larger organizations, we have Marketing Pro, where we can have everything that's included in the marketing essentials and add to it some of the strategic marketing aspects, such as positioning, reviewing your sales pitch deck, etc. So we work very closely with both your product managers and your sales team. With the product managers, because we really want to understand your technology stack very well so we can talk intelligently about it. And with your BDM and sales folks to understand, and where the friction comes from, how we can reduce the sales cycle, which tend to be very long with ISPs, and really help them nurture their leads and be much more effective in their work. And then finally, we have custom projects, where we can look at a particular project that you have in mind. That usually those are sizable projects, and again, every customer is different. So yeah, Talk to us.
How much of your business is hospitality versus multifamily?
We're about a 50-50 split.
Okay. All right. So then what's the next big thing? What are you most excited about in terms of segments of multifamily?
Definitely looking at senior living as far as the one that we're most excited about. We were fortunate enough to be able to acquire industry trailblazer back in 2020 called Viacom. So we have a great passion for senior living, and then if you take a look at it, connectivity is vital and the most rewarding in the senior living industry because there are studies out there that prove that life expectancy, quality of life is greatly improved when you go ahead and include great connectivity solutions for these residents so that way they can stay interconnected and active within their community, but then also being able to maintain the connection to the family that may or may not be in the area. Certainly during COVID, we saw the huge spike as far as the need for FaceTime so that way residents can go ahead and talk to their kids and grandkids. And we've continued to see that transition through and additional, wants and needs that, I don't want to just do it on my phone. I'd like to be able to, see the kids on my TV and, I want to be able to sit someplace comfortably. So that's the area that we're most excited about just because of the rewards that we can see in terms of the residents.
Very quickly, is there a particular subsegment of senior living you're most excited about? Is it assisted living? Is it independent living? Is it memory care?
I mean, our expertise really goes back to the CCRCs that do the, you're going to be there for 20, 30, 40 years. And you know what? We see in all segments, whether it's, the independent living, detached cottages at a community, that vital connectivity back to, staying connected with the rest of the community and being involved in things, as well as being able to talk to families and stay connected to families. It really doesn't matter which phase that you're in. It works well for all those different phases of life.
Right. Now, how can you contribute to the multifamilies developers' bottom line?
Yeah, so there's two areas that we can assist. One, obviously, being an increase in revenue. If you take a look, everybody knows the way that it goes. Compared to somebody going out and getting a retail provider that gets brought in, you're going to get an introductory rate of $80 a month, and then it's going to jump up to $100 to $120 after the first year. With either a higher rent or a technology fee, properties can easily go ahead and start gaining about $50 per unit on the revenue side of things. But the other area, especially in senior living, for example, is the cost reduction of eliminating overtime and reducing the turnover of IT staff. There is nothing worse than, in a senior living community, look, a lot of the labor investment needs to be on medical staff. And unfortunately, the one that has to pay for that is IT. Well, the poor IT person that ends up getting woken up and it's just the way that it goes. It's the nature of that particular business that, the second and third shift nurse, he or she is going to have connectivity problems from time to time. Something isn't going to work. And, when you're getting woken up constantly based on those types of issues, and obviously the nurse can't wait until first shift if, they need to be giving out medications and things of that nature, after a while, that's a huge drag on your IT person or your very small IT staff. So being able to assist a community as far as making sure that, we're not killing them with overtime and making sure that they have long-standing IT staff can go a long way as far as their bottom line.
Okay, that's great. And now what are your biggest business challenges?
So there's really two areas, tight capital still in the MDU industry. If I take a look at student housing, for example, it's been a long-standing piece that has happened, coming out of COVID. Obviously, senior living, there was not a lot of investment going into senior living. And then also when you take a look at senior living, the other problem is the occupancy rate. For a senior living community to be able to be profitable, their occupancy rate needs to be astronomically high. You're talking in like that 90% range. And, coming out of COVID in 2021, for example, I was talking to a lot of communities that were down in the 50s and 60s as far as occupancy range. So, it was very hard for them to be able to get themselves back up to, a profitable stance. And everything that you see in the trade magazines, certainly are talking about senior living in 2025 as being the final year of recovery. Like, okay, now at this point, we can actually start moving forward to where everybody was looking back in 2019 in terms of growth in that space. The good news as far as the challenges, the chip shortage is over. Somebody that's interested in going ahead and improving their infrastructure, pretty much any provider can go ahead and get them set up in about 90 days. So that at least is a good thing. We at least have that behind us.
And what about technical challenges?
Technical challenges, you know what? Honestly, the biggest technical challenge that I run into, again, goes back to the tight capital. Somebody that is still trying to use a Wi-Fi 4 or earlier technology to be able to support students, for example. There is no way that you are going to take an access point that was installed back in 2015, 2016, and be able to keep up with the high demands of streaming and gaming that students are going to be bringing, or even in the conventional side of things. If you have, an older building that is still trying to limp by with that older environment, there's no way that people are going to be able to work from home efficiently on those types of networks. But again, if the capital is tight with the ownership group, then unfortunately you're kind of stuck with that. And, then at that point, you're going to see a lot of lease churn coming up.
Now, one of the topics that was discussed at Broadband Communities last week was that do property owners really or need to upgrade to Wi-Fi 7 or is Wi-Fi 6 and 6E good enough? What's your view on that?
Right now, I would say that my advice to folks is go ahead and stick with either 6 or 6E. 6E kind of gives you that, cost-friendly side of things that at least allows for the 6 gigahertz channel to get unlocked. Look, it's still getting rolled out as far as different, depending upon who has the latest and greatest cell phone or laptop or anything like that. I think the Wi-Fi 7 equipment, unfortunately, the price point on those is still very, very high. I am encouraged, though, that with some of the Wi-Fi 7 APs that I was at High Tech a couple of weeks ago and sat down with a lot of the vendors, and the fact that, full support for 3 different channels with those Wi-Fi 7 APs is going to go a long way. It gives a good depth and breadth of coverage, whether it goes all the way back to IoT devices to the latest and greatest technology that people are using it. So, but unfortunately, I just don't see where that higher price point is really worth it as far as Wi-Fi 7. I would see that pivot into Wi-Fi 7 is really going to kick in, especially in student housing, for the summer 2026 installation season.
Okay, good to know. Very quickly, have you tested tip open Wi-Fi? Are you considering deploying it?
We have gone ahead and kicked the tires with it and taken a look at a couple of different options. Look, it definitely gives, a cost advantage that you're not going to get with others. But, certainly the tried and true, we're very much a ruckus shop. We are, one of the top tiers as far as ruckus providers. It's something that we really understand quite well, and the ruckus team does a great job as far as giving us a lot of support. It really just comes down to the roadmap. Do I need another vendor or vendors as far as the open Wi-Fi side of things, or do I want to innovate my own technology? And I'm going to keep moving back to, I want to innovate my own technology and make sure that there's, portals and authentication benefits that my communities are seeing firsthand versus trying to find, a cheap and cheerful option in terms of equipment.
Okay. I've been throwing a lot of questions to you. So last question here is that if you had a magic wand, what technology service would you to become more successful?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is being able to take a look, and I'll go back to the senior living space, something that I look at as far as like a passive resident tracking. Look, the pendant that we have seniors residents wear, there's a stigma attached to it. They really don't want that type of situation versus a lot of the folks that are moving in now, just like everybody else, their phone is attached to them all the time. They don't go anywhere without their phone. So I can easily see, and again, with some of the conversations that I had with vendors at High Tech, there are some providers out there and equipment vendors that do have some very interesting technology. I know that, one of them is something that we've experienced at one of the Disney resorts that I could see some great benefit from. And then also, being able to add in some of the AI stuff that we see on the video surveillance side of things, I think that in the memory care space can go a long way. I really feel that memory care space is lacking the, up-to-date improvements to be able to understand who's near different exits, doors, things of that nature. So those are the areas that if I had a magic wand, I would want to see as far as improvements are concerned.
Excellent. And that's a wrap. Thank you very much, Scott, for responding to my questions, sharing your insights. Please like, share, subscribe to this channel. That's been growing very fast, from 200 subscribers to over 2,000 in 4 months.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So it's very exciting to have all these discussions. So thanks again, everyone.
All right. Thank you very much.